Welcome to Out There, where we explore the hidden gems of Polk County. I'm your host, Jeremy Morady, and today we're out at Crooked Lake Prairie, exploring the Lake Wales Ridge. All right, we're out here at Crooked Lake Prairie on the beautiful boardwalk overlooking Crooked Lake with Andy Scarborough, who's one of Polk County's environmental technicians. And Andy, basically you're one of the caretakers of some of our properties out this way. And what we're kind of looking at right now is the importance and uniqueness of the Lake Wales Ridge, of which this is a part of. Mm-hmm. And can you talk to us a little bit about what's so unique about this area out here on the east side of the county?
This is the Lake Wales Ridge. 10,000 years ago, this would have been beachfront property overlooking the Gulf of Mexico on one side and the Atlantic on the other. Mm-hmm. This is one of the highest points in Florida, and because of that, it's an important point of aquifer recharge for the entire Florida ecosystems. This area is used for water by a lot of different communities down in Charlotte Harbor, down in Lake Okeechobee, even right here in our own backyard. And that's one of the reasons why this area is so important for the county and for the state as a whole. On top of being an important source of water, it's also home to hundreds of different species that are found only on the Lake Wales Ridge. And that's why we spend so much time and effort trying to take care of them.
Now, what are some of the properties that the Environmental Lands Program has out here where folks can come out and kind of experience this? Because really, if you're more on the western side of Polk County, this is a completely new thing to you that, to me, it doesn't really feel like Florida in some places out here. So what's it like? What are some of the properties?
So you're right, this is a very unique area, the east side of Polk County. We have the Crooked Lake Prairie, which is what we're on now. We have Hickory Lake Scrub, and we have the Crooked Lake Sandhill. Mm-hmm. So these are all pretty close to one another in location, but they all feature very unique in different aspects that are all worth taking your time and exploring. Crooked Lake Prairie is a great site to be a nature detective. This is one of our biggest sites where you can come and see in the different sandy patches the different interactions that mammals might have at night by looking at the tracks that they leave.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things coming out and looking at. You always get to see what was there.
What the raccoons were up to that night.
Depending on the last time that it rained. Just all the variety of animals that are out there that really kind of, you're not going to get that experience much anyplace else.
These properties are also really popular for birding. You can find a lot of different birds at all different times of the year, migratory birds, and of course, we're out on the lakeshore of Crooked Lake. You can find a lot of different wading birds year-round.
What are some of those species of different birds and stuff like that folks can find out here?
You'll find marsh hens, you'll find sandhill cranes, great blue herons, little blue herons, fish crows, almost any wading bird you can imagine you'll find out here.
But on occasion, we will get the passing panther coming through, won't we?
Every once in a while, yeah. You might have a male that comes through roaming around in the north part of the county.
Something to look for on the sandy patches.
Yes, something to look for, finding their prints on the sandy patches. Absolutely.
So now in looking at some of the other properties, we go out to Hickory Lake, we go out to Crooked Lake Sandhill, and those also have their own unique properties. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Absolutely. So the Crooked Lake Sandhill is a 20-acre parcel of land. It's one of the last few remaining parcels that the county owns that has natural sandhill community. It was really popular for agricultural use. A lot of orange groves reside on what was once sandhill. So sandhill is actually a lot like what it sounds like. It's one of the highest. It's a habitat that's found on one of the highest parts of the Lake Wales Ridge. It features very white, sandy soil, almost like what you would find at a beach, because that's what it was tens of thousands of years ago. Water drains really well through the soil, so it doesn't hold a lot of nutrients. You're not going to see a lot of cypress trees or sugar maple, things like that, where it's really wet and needs a lot of nutrients to grow. You're going to find a lot of what looks more like a desert habitat.
Okay.
Almost. You're going to find a lot of cactus. You're going to find a lot of little shrubby plants that don't need a lot of water or a lot of nutrients to grow. All of these habitats are also fire adapted, which is a very big part of habitats in Polk County and in Florida. It needs fire to thrive. So one of the management strategies that the county uses is a prescribed fire program. We seek to mimic what would naturally occur throughout the year from lightning strikes and trigger these prescribed fires as a way to, in part, protect the communities through fuel reduction, and as a way to help keep these habitats thriving and healthy. A healthy Florida habitat is one that sees fire depending on its regime.
And also, when you're looking at all of these properties, why is it that there's this concentration of rare and unique plants, animals, and different things in nature than anywhere else?
This part of Florida was above water for longer than a lot of other parts of Florida because of the elevation. It had more time to evolve and more time to adapt differently to the habitat. It saw less salt water because, again, we're sitting on beachfront property. So it was able to adapt differently than lower elevations of Florida.
All right. Now, I know we use these different properties in a variety of ways, from recreation, but also we do a number of different studies out here to kind of keep track of what's going on with the different animal populations. What are a couple of those that you'd like to talk to us about?
So on the Sandhill, we've recently done a gopher tortoise survey where we tried to determine how many gopher tortoise burrows we have. That is a good way to see kind of how many gopher tortoises we might have on the property. It also lets us see how well they're doing as a community. If we can see more juvenile gopher tortoise burrows, a lot smaller gopher tortoise burrows, that is a good indicator that they're breeding and that they're able to produce more offspring, and it's a good sign of a healthy species. If we see a lot of old, big gopher tortoise burrows, that might mean they're not succeeding as well productively. We would adjust our management strategies accordingly. At Crooked Lake Prairie and Crooked Lake West, we do surveys for sand skinks and for scrub jays. These are two federally listed threatened or endangered animals that are only found on the Lake Wales Ridge, only found on the different scrubby habitats that are in Florida. And so because they're federally listed, it's crucial for their success and for the successful management of these properties that we monitor the population's health.
And today we're at Crooked Lake Prairie, one of our 15 environmental land sites, and we're going to be surveying for sand skinks. You may ask, what is a sand skink and why do we care? Well, first of all, sand skinks are a tiny lizard. They're almost legless, but they do have arms and legs. They're about the size of a number 2 pencil. And the cool thing about them is they're completely fossorial, meaning they live their entire lives under sand. So what we're actually looking for today under boards is their S-shaped tracks that they leave when they come to the surface to forage. And so the federal government has protected this species, and anytime we have a protected species, it is our responsibility as land managers to make sure we know how the population is doing. Today we're going to be checking in and following up on a survey that we've been doing for over 13 years, which is the longest running monitoring of a sand skink species. So join us as we go check some cover boards. So one of the reasons we do the sand skink monitoring here at Crooked Lake Prairie is because we started this project back in 2002 in the sand skink monitoring project. In every station we went to, there was sand skinks at it. Well, Shortly thereafter, if you remember what happened in 2004, we had 3 hurricanes. All 3 of those hurricanes crossed here over the Babson Park area, which is where Crooked Lake Prairie is located near. And this site went underwater. In fact, the entire site, except for about 40 acres, was underwater at one point. That year we were doing scrub jay monitoring in the scrub in inner tube floats to float around with binoculars to monitor our scrub jays, because the whole site was under about a foot of water. Well, the years following the hurricane, the sand skink population tanked, and for the next 5 years we had very few sand skinks. And we've seen in the last couple of years an increase, and like we're seeing today, it's almost that they're back to the way they were before the hurricanes, seeing tracks at almost every single station, which is really a cool thing to track over the long-term history of the sand skinks, life history, and start to learn a little bit more about population dynamics with them. So we're at Crooked Lake Prairie, and this map shows the boundaries outlined in white. Each of the numbered are our monitoring stations. At each station we have the 4 boards that we are checking. Those are our 4 cover boards that are located at cardinal directions north, south, east, and west. Crooked Lake Prairie is approximately 525 acres, and on this site we have a little over 30 stations that we do for sand skink monitoring. So the cover boards are sheets of plywood that are cut in an approximate size for our study of 2 foot by 2 foot, and they're laid at those cardinal directions. The cover boards is a typical way to monitor for amphibians and reptiles. We call those herps in the ecology world. And so what it does is creates a microclimate, the boards do, with the ground, trapping moisture, provide a little bit of shade, and acts as a refuge from arid regions like we are here in Central Florida. And what it does is it attracts insects like antlions or small ants, and attracts other things that the sand skink finds as their food item. And so they are attracted to the board therefore for eating and come to the surface. And that's how we're able to track see their tracks. And that's what we're looking for under the boards, is just simply the presence or absence of a sand skink track under the board. So we do this during April and May. We actually survey for several weeks throughout April and May, and this has been the designated time the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has determined is acceptable for surveying for sand skinks. What we do know about them is they seem to be most active during this time frame. There are many other times of the years where it appears they're completely dormant, and you would be out here in December or in November and we wouldn't find any tracks on the site. So April and May is what we believe to be their most active period of time of year. So at each station we have 4 boards. They're set up at the cardinal directions, north, south, east, or west. We've already checked north, south, and west. This is our east board. Let's see what we got here today. And any kind of track counts. There's a very shallow track on the side over here, which is pretty hard to see with the shade of the trees right now, but this would count as presence, and that's all we're doing at this point, is recording the presence or absence of the sand skinks on the site. We ask that if you're out hiking on one of our environmental land sites, we always want you to pick up trash, of course, and take it with you, because we want you to help us keep our sites clean. But if you see very specifically laid 2 foot by 2 foot plywood sheets of plywood on the ground, that's us doing our research. So please just let them sit, leave them be, do not disturb them. They're part of our monitoring.
The scrub jays need to be surveyed on an annual basis to determine the population and the population dynamics, if they have had a successful breeding. Also for land management, because they have to have open scrub type habitat for them to bury their acorns and to raise their young effectively and be free for predators and not have hiding places for predators. So we come out and survey them just to see what's happening within the bird population and to inform the land managers of anything that needs to be done. Florida scrub jay is listed as a threatened species in Florida. It is only in Florida. It is an endemic bird to this area. It's our only endemic bird in Florida. And it likes to live in the scrub habitat, which of course is popular with developers, so that's why it's declining in population, that and land management issues. The Florida scrub jay is a cooperative breeder. They will nest, and last year's juveniles adults at this point will help to raise this year's babies. So those are considered helper birds. And of those, there's usually one bird that will sit up on top of the closest tree, and that's called the sentry bird or the sentinel bird, to watch for predators and to alert the other birds in case of a predator nearby. So the hawks, the swallowtail kites, snakes, any other predators in the area that might they do sound an alarm. And then this year's babies will then become the helpers for next year. So the population kind of grows that way. And then the population from one area, hopefully, will migrate to another area. They don't go very far, like 10 to 25 miles is about max, to breed with other birds, so that hopefully you'll have a sustainable population. We survey Crooked Lake West, the Stewart property, the Lewis tract, and I think that's pretty much it in Polk County for environmental lands. The whole Lake Wales Ridge in Florida is pretty much the habitat for the Florida scrub jay, but they also will live on each coast a little bit in little pockets. Jay Watch is a state program run through Audubon of Florida, and they coordinate volunteers all over the state to come together at different sites everywhere they know that there are scrub jays to do surveys, and they do it from June 15th to July 15th, and it's all over from Ocala down to Highlands County. So they coordinate a lot of people and land managers just to try to tell them what they need to do to help the birds. One of the ways that we try to get the Florida scrub jay and other birds to come out is called pishing, and you just go psh, 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 psh. And that supposedly alerts the birds that there's somebody out there, we need to go investigate, we need to check it out, and then they will come up and look to see what's going on. So part of the protocol is you come out and you look for predators, and then if there are no predators present, then you will play a speaker with got a Florida scrub jay call on it, and you play that for a minute, and then you wait 2 minutes to see if anybody responds. And then if they don't, then you repeat that process 3 times and at a transect point, and it's a laid out set of points that the land manager has set. So you can compare habitat, if it's good habitat for the scrub jays, if they're present, and if you go to an area that's not populated with jays, then you can look to see what does the habitat look like. Maybe it needs to be burned or mechanically removed or something like that. I guess the overall consensus there's an annual event for the Jay Watch volunteers, and they will do compilation of all the sites, how many sites where there actually are birds, how many sites where there were birds, and numbers of birds. So it's kind of depressing, and the birds are on the decline, and so it gets to be a problem, and there's just more and more land converted all the time from scrub to developments. I think enough people care and are working to help save the Florida scrub jay that there's always hope.
All right, we're back here with Tabitha Beal again, and you talked to us already once about our sand skinks that we have and what we study. Pam talked to us a little bit about the scrub jays, and now we're out here at Crooked Lake West, which isn't open to the public yet, but we can find both of those species here, right?
Yes, Crooked Lake West, the property that we're on, is actually one of our newest projects that we've been working on for several years now. And when it's in completion, it'll be about 11,000 acres. The parcel that we're standing on today is a little over 3,000 and borders Crooked Lake. Okay.
Now, tell us a little bit about Crooked Lake, because I know that also plays in a part to the importance of why we have this and our other properties at Sand Hill and the Prairie as well.
Right, so the Crooked Lake Sand Hill, Crooked Lake Prairie, and our Crooked Lake West site just lay on the western shore of the Lake Wales Ridge.
Had to go through that a little bit, didn't you?
North, southeast. Never eat sour worms, kids. Yeah. Remember that. And so it also lies around the Crooked Lake itself, which is one of our, the only actually in Polk County, outstanding Florida water body. And so by us protecting these ridge sites around that lake, we're protecting not only our watershed from stormwater runoff going into it, but we're also protecting aquifer recharge with these ridge sandy systems going in. And then the Lake Wells Ridge itself is known worldwide for its endemic species, and so we're protecting those as well.
And the endemic species that's out here for us is the scrub jay. And so tell us a little bit about, when you guys come out and do these types of things, why is this property so important for that?
So being good stewards of the land and land managers that we are here with Polk County Parks and Natural Resources, we are charged with helping manage for some of our federally protected species. And the Florida scrub jay is one of those species that is listed as a threatened federally protected species. And so we manage to help make sure that species lives the long term for long-term survival. And one of the management activities that we do is prescribe fire. And so we need to know where the Florida scrub jays are sort of hanging out and where their groups or families are at, so that when we apply prescribed fire, just like a doctor prescribes a prescription to you, we're taking all these factors into consideration of where there are listed species, where even sand skinks, Florida scrub jay, there may be some other species out here as well, nesting bald eagles, those kind of things, and the planning for that prescribed fire.
Okay. So now you guys have been working on this property now for a few years. Take us through a little bit about what all is out here that folks haven't gotten a glimpse of yet.
So this property is a gorgeous piece of land. It's been managed for a number of years formerly as a cattle ranch, and they did an exceptional job managing for the natural resources at the same time. And so it has a little bit of everything out here. From US 27 as you go by, you can see the large basin marsh, which is this huge marsh system that takes up several hundred acres, that's full of wildflowers, grasses, sedges, and those kind of things, that really is sort of this filtering system for water quality improvement. And then as you move out from that, you start to get into our wet flatwoods and mesic flatwoods, and it has large expanses of those flatwood systems. And flatwoods are composed primarily of saw palmettos on the ground with lots of wildflowers and wiregrass and other grasses mixed in, with these gorgeous old longleaf pines in their canopy. All the way to our upland system that we're standing in front of right now, where it's more of a scrubby flatwood, xeric hammock, and scrub system. And that particular habitat, the scrubby flatwoods, is where we find a lot of our federally protected species, such as the Florida scrub jay.
Okay. What are some of the other species that are federally protected that we got out here?
So in this site we have the sand skink. Mm-hmm. We also have indigo snakes, which the eastern indigo is the longest non-poisonous snake in North America. So it's pretty cool. They are in decline as well because they have very large home ranges, and so protecting, you wouldn't think a snake moves a lot, but being a large snake, it actually has a very large home range that it travels in.
Wow.
So protecting larger parcels like this is really important for its long-term survival to move around. And then we have several plant species on site as well. We have the scrub morning glory, which is our trailing vine that sort of goes along the ground and ends up with a very big purple morning glory flower
I've
on
seen
the end
those.
of it.
They're beautiful.
Yeah, typically you see them very easily from our Hickory Lake scrub sites,
Yep.
lower on, down south on the ridge. And then we also have the federally listed milkweed that's here, which is a taller milkweed, a little spindly, but has white flowers on it. So it's also here. And we have our rosemary. It's not federally listed, but another cool plant, and several others are here as well.
All right. So now, with all the work that you guys have been doing, what are we talking about timeline or possible timeline for the public being able to get out here and hike around and see what all's out?
Yeah, so as protection of these very important, crucial pieces of property came we had to get very creative, and we also had to work with a lot of different partners through that process. And Crooked Lake West is probably the best example that our county's Parks and Natural Resources is a part of, to acquire a piece of parcel working with partners. Typically, we do a 50-50 acquisition with the Southwest Florida Water Management District, like Circle B Bar Reserve is, or South Florida Water Management District, like our Samika site is. On this site here, being the size that it was, we needed to bring in a third partner, and so we were actually able to partner on this site with NRCS, which is the Natural Resources Conservation Soils Group, through the federal government. And so they actually have what is known as a WRP, or a wetland reserve program easement over this entire property. And then the Water Management District and the county took ownership of the rest of the full fee on that. And so when you have multiple partners as this, everybody has their guidelines that we have to follow to get through, especially for managing and setting the baselines for what you can do with the property and those kind of things. And so that's what we've been doing over the last several years, is doing some basic management on site, keeping the resources in check, doing some prescribed fire and keeping the invasives at bay, and developing this management plan. We've developed a timber plan. And you also may see out here today some of the cows grazing. We also have a grazing management plan for this site. And all those come together. Once those are completed, then we end up with our site management plan. And so that's in draft right now, and hopefully in the next several months, we'll be taking it to our county commissioners. Right now it's at the district's office just waiting on approval. So.
Okay, so looking maybe next year or something like that, starting to get a glimpse of that,
Yeah, it would be great to
up.
open the property to the first round, I guess you could say, next year sometime. Another thing that we're sort of waiting on is another one of our, not necessarily partners, but neighbors that we're working closely with, is Department of Transportation.
Okay.
And on the work that they're doing on US 27 and that widening project.
Oh yeah, all kinds of stuff going on, moving and shaking out here. So, but now once it's open, you guys plan trails? What are you thinking?
So we've had our first public meeting already for this site, and we hold those public meetings as part of our management planning process. And on this particular site, we got a lot of feedback from that public meeting on the neighbors and residents and community that surrounds this piece of property, that they feel it's most important to protect the resources first. And that fits very well with our program. Our program is to protect the water, wildlife, and wilderness first, and then when appropriate, provide passive outdoor recreation. And so they've really directed us through that first step of that process to not build a lot of amenities, to put some very basic items out here. And so we will have some natural trails that'll be open for hiking, some natural trails that'll possibly open for horseback riding as well. The thing about this site, as you know, you've been out here different times of the year with us, is that it gets very wet. When it's wet, it is very wet.
Oh yeah.
And so these trails that we're putting in will be seasonally wet trails. So there'll be times where you can't access part of the site. But again, it's part of us allowing the system to function naturally, to do what it does to clean the waters, to recharge our aquifer, those kind of things.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing all of that in action and getting out here and enjoying it with the rest of the public.
Yeah, we will love to have you all out.
All right. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to meet with us and go over all this, and can't wait to see this open up to folks who haven't seen it before, because it's so amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. That about does it for this episode. Join us again next month when we're out there.